This is Learn from Others, where we interview a cross-section of successful individuals so you can learn from their experiences, achievements, and even their mistakes. We ask 4 questions that will educate and inspire. Greg Stanley will be your guide as we join our guest on a journey from adolescent daydreaming to success in today's world. Join us on this adventure as we learn from others together.
Welcome to Learn from Others, where we help others succeed by sharing success. I'm very excited to introduce our special guest today, Christian Bradley. Christian, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm amazing. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. Well, before we find out what you're actually doing today, if you would, could you please tell us what you want to be when you grow up?
That's kind of a twofold question.
It always is.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be a caveman. I was, and I'll explain that. So I was big into dinosaurs. I love dinosaurs. And so my father, I wanted to be a paleontologist. So my father said when I was like 3 or 4 years old, I wanted, like you said, you want to be a caveman. But it ended up growing into a bigger love of history.
Right.
So I'm going to be a history teacher. That was my career goal at one point in time.
I wanted to be a caveman as well at one time. I dressed up as one for Halloween. So.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, now tell us, what do you do today?
I'm in talent acquisition with TriHealth, so I'm recruiting. I hire people for a living, so that's what I do.
You hire people for a living. Okay, yes. Tell me, what does that look like, a day in the life of, like, what does your typical work week look like?
Oh, my God. Meetings, phone calls, interviews, phone interviews, on-site interviews, more meetings, negotiating with compensation when I'm extending offers, negotiating with the candidate when I'm extending an offer, right. Explaining benefits, haggling with my hiring managers that I work with as far as money with the candidate. They might want to give them the money that I think they deserve based on their resume. They might want to give them a little bit more. I'm like, no, that might not work, or they might want to give them less. I'm like, no, pay these people. So. Working with different nonprofit organizations to try to pipeline new talent. Working with different schools to try to pipeline new talent.
So it's basically you always have a running list of needs.
Yes.
And you're always trying to fill those needs with the best candidate possible while representing the candidate in a way that keeps them
So it's
whole.
kind of like being an advocate on both ends of it, right? So I want to be able to make sure that I am representing the best interest of the candidate and also representative of the company. Because what happens is that if you hire the wrong individual, it could set your team back for a couple of months. Yeah. But not to mention the company loses money. So, and then you have some hiring managers who want to hire who they want to hire. And then when you say, I told you so, you shouldn't hire this person, hire somebody else. So that's why you have an email trail. Right.
Now, how did you get in this role? What was your career path to this point?
Sure. So, again, I wanted to be a history teacher. That was my goal. Unfortunately, obviously, I didn't finish college in time to do that. And I ended up finishing later on. But by that time, I was already in logistics and supply chain and customer service. And I was working at Procter & Gamble as a consultant on the logistics line, pretty much being building trucks through SAP for our CBS team. That project ended after 2.5 years abruptly. I was wondering what career, and to be totally honest, what career are African-American men not in? Right. Prevalent in this and I did some research in this 4 fields: human resources, IT, healthcare, and education. Yep. So I knew that I'll be about a year or 2 out before I finish my degree to go into education. So I had a friend who worked as a recruiter for a company called Agilon Staffing, and they had a need for a recruiter at Western Southern. So I ended up getting an opportunity at Western Southern, making like $17 an hour in 2014, making 200 phone calls a day, trying to recruit financial sales reps and insurance agents. And I had 2 different territories, Kansas and Nebraska and Southern California.
Oh, wow.
So
you're in Cincinnati.
Yeah, so I'm calling people because Western Southern was expanding in those areas. And I was trying to, obviously, I was learning how to distinguish us from the Mutual of Omahas and the New York Lifes and all these bigger firms. And we had a lot of other things that those firms didn't have. But again, making 200 phone calls a day, don't call me, I want to sell insurance, click. And, I've been hit certain sales quotas and certain numbers as a contractor because it's a temporary job. So the grind was crazy. And then I went from there to a company called Hire Staffing, HYUR. And this would be an interesting kind of story for you. Dhani Jones played for the Bengals. That's his company. Oh. His fraternity brother is Abe Overoon, who is now my mentor, my big brother, good, like a huge influence on my life. Him and Dhani went to Michigan together. They're fraternity brothers, actually. And they had a small recruiting firm, minority-owned recruiting firm, obviously. And it was he hired me, took a chance on me, hired me, and I actually fired me within 3 months. And the reason why he fired me, I'll take you to the story. Are you a football fan?
A little bit, yeah.
Buddy Ryan and Chris Carter?
Yeah.
So I wasn't doing drugs or anything like that, but I was just not ready for that role.
Right.
I wasn't ready for the responsibility. I wasn't ready as a startup, so I wasn't dependable. I just wasn't ready to step up the way it needed somebody to step up. And I was actually their third hire. It was only 4 of us that was working at this company. And I wasn't doing anything to add value or push the needle forward. So he fired me. He took me into a conference room. I had the week from hell that week. And that Friday was kind of the last straw. He took me in the conference room after around noon, and we had a conversation. We both cried because he didn't want to fire me.
Right.
And but that was that Buddy Ryan, Chris Carter moment when he cut him from the Eagles, and he recommended him to go to the Vikings, and Chris Carter's been clean ever since. That kind of propelled my career to a different level. I had several other contract roles, and then a buddy of mine had an opportunity at TriHealth. Said, "Hey man, I'm going to TriHealth. Jeff Davis is the director. We're trying to turn the whole TA department around." And I interviewed at TriHealth in October of 2017. I had a verbal offer. He had to rescind the offer because of budgets. Got a call back in October of 2018, and I've been riding the wave ever since, man.
Yeah.
So I mean, recruiting and right now, since the economy is doing so well, there's so many opportunities in recruiting especially with vendors and things of that nature. So you have to kind of bide your time. Sometimes you get into an opportunity where it's kind of like with Tribe, I kind of got in and I'm not going anywhere. But other times, like my path was so unconventional. I had like 7 roles within 4 years. They were all contracts. They were 6 months, a year. Besides hire, I got fired from there, but that was a full-time role. But everything else, Kroger was a contract role, and then SOK. DHL was there for a year. That was a contract role.
Wow.
All these, but I took all of that knowledge I learned, all those software systems, all of that, and took it, and now here I am today, and I'm just so blessed and happy to be able to share that journey with people because again, it's tough, man, and it's tough because again, stability is key, right? I mean, it's key. So
well, it seems interesting because you overcame a horrible situation of being in a role you weren't prepared for, getting fired, but it really kind of fueled you to succeed, which is amazing. And then it sounds like you had a very strong network of folks.
Absolutely. So that's I think people don't understand. Like your network is your net worth. People don't understand the power of networking. I think, especially the generation of kids. My 14-year-old daughter is she's a freshman at Fairfield High School, and her and I were talking about this. She's an extrovert. She's very much like me, but this generation of kids, they don't like being around people they don't know. They're stuck in their silos with their social media. They can have their own friend groups, and they don't want to venture out to meet new people.
Right.
So I try to impart in her to say, sweetheart, you need to start networking, and I'm gonna get you around someone because she's a suburban kid. I get her every other weekend, and when I get her and we have our talks throughout the week, I say, hey, we need to get you around some other folks who are not in your network, in your silo, in the city, where you can be able to get opportunities. I've gotten pretty much every job I've gotten because somebody recommended me.
Right.
I've met people who have been in who have, like my colleague Diana Long. She's in diversity and inclusion. She was her role was limited at the chamber about a year ago, and she didn't went out with a job for a year, and because she didn't have a network. I mean, she didn't know who to. So that I can only imagine that. It went for her husband having a savings and a pen. Who knows what she would have been doing? You know?
Right.
So I've learned, but I've also learned not to squander your network either, not to burn bridges. I burned a lot of bridges in my day. I'm one of these guys who owns my stuff. I take ownership and accountability, and I've unfortunately made some bad decisions that have put me back some years where I could be where I'm at 39. I could have been where I was at 29, but I would not take any of those experiences away because I also learned from those. Now I appreciate where I'm at. I appreciate being here talking to you today. It's an honor to be here talking to these young people about opportunities and about jobs with TriHealth, and it's an honor to be talking to you. And that's how I feel. I'm just blessed to be here, man.
So speaking of which, looking back, what would you do differently?
Listen to my dad.
Listen to your dad.
Listen to my dad. My father, single father, he raised me and my sister by himself. Kind of an anomaly in the African American community the last 50 years or so, but strong work ethic. My father's my hero, and I really wish I listened to him more.
Right.
Opposed to saying yes sir and then going through one ear out the other. But I wouldn't change. That's the only thing I would change. But I would not. I learned so much now. I appreciate more than I've ever appreciated before. I do my best. I'm gonna take things for granted, and I did that a lot. I took things for granted. I kind of just kind of live for the day, for tomorrow's not promised, that type of attitude.
Right.
And I do the best I can to make sure that I'm not, that I'm appreciative of opportunities and I take advantage of opportunities and I pay it forward to people. Not because I feel obligated to, because I want to and because it was done to me. And that's, I really can't put it any other way.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you told your dad that?
Absolutely.
Good.
He's my hero. He knows that. Anybody who knows me, Mina's known me since we were kids.
Right.
She knows my dad is my hero. That's my guy.
Right.
I love that man. I'll be 40 in January. This man still parents me.
Right.
He came to my house on Saturday to look at an event that's not this clogged or something, and he comes in and takes over. Right. He comes in, he sees his bed, whatever, and he goes to my bathroom and says, "Son, you might want to put some towels in here. I'm sorry, some paper towels in here, son. You know, we're okay, Dad." So I go get the paper and I put it, and I didn't remove them, and they're still there. And this was Saturday, so it's just a thing that, I would never ever. To answer your question, I would not take anything away. I would not do anything differently, but listen to him as far as actions.
Right.
I wish I would do some things differently, but in the grand scheme of things, I've learned so much and become so much appreciative that, it's all in God's timing, in my opinion.
Now, let's make the assumption one of our students wants to do what you do, wants to be a recruiter.
Sure.
What advice would you give them?
I would tell them to go to school, look into maybe marketing or maybe a marketing or maybe a business administrative role, hone their networking skills, because now what's happening in the marketplace in regards to recruiting is that your corporations want seasoned people in talent acquisition. They want people who have experience. You hardly when somebody gets hired from a corporation like a P&G or a Fifth Third or a U.S. Bank or a Kroger right out of college as a recruiter. It could happen, but it's rare. What's happening now is like a lot of these vendors, your Decos, your Manpower, your ProLinks, your Insight Globals. These vendors are everywhere, and they're hiring right out of college.
Right.
But it's a grind.
Right.
So if recruiting or HR is what you seriously want to do,
right,
then you need to network. It's grunt work at first, man. I mean, again, my first job was making 200 calls a day at Western Southern in recruiting.
Right.
So if you are able to grind and figure out that it won't be handed to you. My niece says, "I want your job." Asia, you're 19. No 19-year-old has my job.
Right.
No 19-year-old has a job. You got to work your way up to it. So again, you might have a one-off where you might have somebody who may, give you an opportunity at right out of college as a recruiter. If you did some internship, you might have an opportunity there. But in the corporate setting, our jobs are so cushy.
Right.
It's not a grind in a corporate setting unless you work for a tyrant, but it's not really a grind once it's civilized. But like the grind is on the vendor level, and you normally prove yourself, you prove your chops because you have to on the vendor level. You have to fill that rec because if you don't, you're out the door.
Right.
You don't hit your 10 hires or your 5 submittals for that week. It's a write up. You don't do it again. It's a final. It's the third one, you're out the door because you're paying for your seat.
Right.
And I'm not going to pay you $50,000 a year or as your base salary if you're not bringing in business.
Right.
So that's the grind. So it's no really a blueprint way to get to it. It's just a grind.
Right.
And if you can get in and I would say intern, network, start off your junior, senior year in high school, meet some people, get in some opportunities, and then as you're in school, just continue to don't go work at Abercrombie and Fitch when you come home from college.
Right.
Go get an internship.
Even if it's free.
If it's free. And a lot of these, and I think that kind of starts at home with the parents' expectations.
Yep.
I think and this is another subject. I think sometimes now, with my generation of parents, we don't do a good job of putting our kids up to succeed very well. Some of the parents kind of say, "Hey, you're 18, figure it out."
Right.
Not a lot of them, but some of them do that, as opposed to maybe helping your kid put them in a position to win.
Right.
And I think that if your kid wants to go to, like my daughter wants to be a graphic designer. She's a freshman. That could probably change next year. Me and her mother and her other father are trying to, put her in a position to win. That way, when she's a senior, she has some internships. She has some things set up. She has some things going. That way, when she is 22, she hopes she has a job when she graduates.
Right.
And that way she can start sustaining herself. She want to stay at home for another year or two to make stack money?
Right.
Let's do that.
That's great advice.
But I think it's more so about how do we set our kids up to succeed, and also what do we do to put them in a position to win.
Right.
I think a lot of us don't do a really good job of that. And
No.
that's my advice is how do we put kids in a better position to win?
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking us on your career journey today, Christian.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Learn from Others, where we help others succeed by sharing success. Where will our next adventure take us? Subscribe to find out. If you know of someone who has a cool career story or occupation, contact Greg through Instagram at Greg Stanley LFO. That's GregStanley LFO. And we will see you soon as we learn from others together.